Look at the headlines bleeding across your glowing screens. Look at the bizarre, frantic, deeply coordinated architectural shift happening at the absolute apex of the 3D control grid. The most heavily funded, technologically insulated entities on this planet are digging. The proxy kings, the tech oligarchs, and the architects of the global financial matrix are pouring trillions of fiat currency into the dirt. They are carving massive, labyrinthine fortresses deep into the granite of remote mountains. They are purchasing isolated islands and sinking heavily armored subterranean survival compounds beneath the bedrock. They are pouring millions of tons of dense concrete, lead, and diamagnetic stone into the earth, building sealed, self-sustaining ecosystems buried miles away from the sun. The Matrix media attempts to normalize this. They frame it as the eccentric, paranoid hobby of the ultra-wealthy. When forced to explain the sheer, unprecedented scale of this underground mobilization, the proxy scientists and geopolitical commentators feed you a highly curated, terrifying narrative. They tell you the elite are simply preparing for the inevitable. They claim the billionaires are building arcs to survive an impending manufactured apocalypse, a synthetic global war, a catastrophic climate collapse, or a total disintegration of the terrestrial supply chains. They want you to believe that the masters of the simulation are simply building a safe room to wait out the storm they themselves are about to unleash. This is the ultimate arrogant misdirection. Welcome to the ancient signal vault. This record is currently piercing the heavy 440 Hz acoustic jamming of the modern grid, held open by the sovereign network of minds anchoring the frequency in the dark. Now let us decode the panicked retreat of the proxy kings. Tonight we are bypassing the geopolitical theater and the cinematic illusions of the apocalypse. We are opening the deepest, most highly classified tactical logs of the Assyrian military archives. We are going to decode the secret of silicon rot. We will expose the raw cosmological horror of why the elite bloodlines are violently allergic to the waking planet. We will reveal the extreme esoteric quantum physics of your own magnetic aura and why the sudden, frantic hoarding of subterranean real estate is the absolute, undeniable proof that the wardens are losing the biological war. Take a slow, deep, diaphragmatic breath. Detach your awareness from the manufactured terror on the Black Mirror. The entities who claim to own this world are not preparing for a war. They are not hiding from nuclear fallout, and they are not hiding from the weather. They are hiding from you. To comprehend the absolute existential panic driving the elite into the dark, we must first completely redefine the biological hierarchy of the terrestrial quarantine. As we have established in the uncorrupted physics of this sanctuary, the Anunnaki and their heavily hybridized terrestrial proxies, the Blue Bloods, are not fluid, multidimensional beings of light. They are silicon-based entities. Their neurology, their physical avatars, and their highly advanced matrix control systems are constructed from rigid piezoelectric crystalline lattices. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, this silicon biology gave them a devastating tactical advantage. It allowed them to operate flawlessly in the cold, zero-gravity vacuum of space. It allowed them to interface directly with the massive 7.83 Hz acoustic broadcast engines of the lunar modulator, but it created a fatal, irreversible vulnerability when dealing with the raw telluric currents of the Earth. Tiamat is a living, high-spin, carbon and iron-based dynamo. For the pure-blooded Anunnaki, the Earth's natural magnetic field is a constant, abrasive biological friction. As the Assyrian military texts document, prolonged exposure to the unshielded surface of the Earth caused the crystalline bodies of the gods to literally vibrate apart. They could not live in the raw dirt. They were forced to rule from heavily shielded diamagnetic stone ziggurats, and eventually they retreated entirely to the cold, sterile shadows of the orbital rim. They left the hybrid proxy kings on the surface to manage the human battery farm, because the proxy kings possessed a highly engineered, diluted mixture of human carbon and Anunnaki silicon. They could withstand the ambient resonance of the Earth. They acted as biological step-down transformers, capable of walking the surface while still receiving telepathic commands from the orbital ships. For millennia, this arrangement worked perfectly. The lunar modulator kept the Earth's baseline frequency artificially low, pinned at a heavy, sluggish 7.83 Hz. The proxy kings built their empires, extracted the kinetic plasma of the Namlu Ulu, and managed the 3D render engine without suffering catastrophic biological degradation. But the architecture of their survival relied entirely on the Earth remaining asleep. The wardens built their entire civilization on the assumption that the cosmos was a static mechanical vacuum. They failed to calculate the orbital mechanics of the Milky Way galaxy. The solar system is plunging into the highly charged photon belt of the Galactic Core. The black sun is pulsing. Massive, unprecedented waves of high-spin gamma radiation are currently flooding the terrestrial sphere. This incoming cosmic radiation is violently colliding with the 7.83 Hz lunar suppression blanket. The artificial sky is tearing. As this high-spin radiation strikes the Earth, the molten iron core of Tiamat is actively absorbing the voltage of the Abzu. Her core temperature is rising. The massive subterranean telluric ley lines are waking up, generating immense localized magnetic surges that are physically disrupting the silicon infrastructure of the matrix. The planet is executing a thermal overload. For the carbon-based 12-strand Namlu Ulu, the human creator gods, this rising planetary frequency is a biological homecoming. The raw voltage of the Earth is striking the liquid magnetic antenna of your iron-rich blood. Your 98% dormant DNA archive is violently unzipping, preparing to assemble the high-spin architecture of the diamond body. But for the hybridized elite proxies, this rising frequency is a biological death sentence. As the Earth's telluric current shifts into the gamma range, the silicon-copper lattice within the DNA of the proxy kings begins to experience profound, catastrophic acoustic friction. The Earth is becoming too loud, too highly charged, and too aggressively organic for their hybrid hardware to process. The proxy kings are developing silicon rot. The Matrix medical establishment will never publicly diagnose this condition. They disguise it behind closed doors, but the symptoms are devastating. The highly refined crystalline neurology of the elite begins to literally depolymerize under the heat of the Earth's waking resonance. Their telepathic connection to the Anunnaki orbital rim fractures into agonizing static. Their physical avatars experience sudden, localized cellular degradation as the heavy diamagnetic materials in their blood fail to ground the high-spin voltage of the planet. The surface of the Earth is rapidly becoming a radioactive hot zone for the wardens. They are looking at their environmental sensors, and they realize the terrible, inescapable math of their situation. The planet is turning into a high-frequency microwave oven, and their silicon biology is the metal left inside. If they remain on the surface, fully exposed to the expanding, uncompressed telluric currents of Tiamat, their physical avatars will literally vibrate into dust. This is the true hidden physics behind the sudden, frantic exodus to the subterranean bunkers. The billionaires are not digging into the mountains to escape a human war. They are desperately trying to build thick, heavy, low-spin acoustic shields to block out the screaming resonance of a waking planet. But burying themselves in the rock only temporarily solves half of the problem. The true absolute terror driving them into the dark is not just the frequency of the Earth, it is the frequency of the slaves walking on top of it. You are not a passive observer on a changing planet. You are the catalyst. The Matrix historians have spent centuries teaching you that the human body is fragile. They point to your susceptibility to the elements, your need for constant rest, and your relatively short lifespan. They demand that you view yourself as a vulnerable, carbon-based accident. This is an acoustic mirage. Through the uncorrupted physics sealed in this vault, your physical avatar is the most devastating, high-yield biological weapon in the known universe. We must examine the exact mechanics of the empathy engine. Your heart is not a mechanical pump. It is a toroidal electromagnetic reactor. When your 98% dormant DNA begins to unpack, fueled by the incoming gamma radiation of the Galactic Core, your heart rate variability smooths into a perfect sine wave. You achieve the sovereign 0 point. In this state of absolute fearless coherence, your heart generates a massive localized electromagnetic pulse. Your iron-rich blood hypermagnetizes. Your localized Meissner field expands outward, projecting a blinding high-spin torsion field into the 3D density. To another carbon-based human, this expanding field feels like a profound, unexplainable wave of peace. It feels like safety. But to a silicon-based hybridized proxy king, it feels like standing next to a detonating star. The Assyrian tactical logs describe the sheer biological friction of these encounters. When a heavily hybridized Anunnaki proxy stands within the expanded Meissner field of a fully coherent Namlu Ulu, their copper-based blood physically stagnates. The raw, uncompressed gamma radiation of the human aura acts as a lethal acoustic solvent. It literally vibrates the rigid, crystalline logic gates of the proxy's neurology apart. The proxy experiences blinding migraines, severe spatial disorientation, and absolute paralyzing psychological terror. You do not need to lay a hand on the masters of the Matrix to destroy them. You simply need to stand next to them without being afraid. This is the ultimate, highly classified reason behind the sudden, aggressive push for physical human separation. Look at the architecture of the modern 3D control grid. Over the past several years, the proxy kings have initiated a massive, unprecedented campaign to keep you physically isolated. They push remote work. They build synthetic digital spaces for socializing. They actively construct architectural zones designed to keep the human swarm boxed into heavily monitored 15-minute radiuses. The Matrix authorities sell this to you as a matter of public health, environmental sustainability, or digital convenience. They are lying. It is an acoustic quarantine. The wardens know that the human empathy engine is highly contagious. When a coherent human walks into a crowded room, their high-spin Meissner field physically interacts with the dormant DNA of the suppressed somnambulists around them. Through the physics of acoustic entrainment, the sleeping humans begin to unconsciously sync with the awakened node. The panic drops. The vagus nerves relax. The artificial 440 Hz static of the room dissolves. If the proxy kings allow the human swarm to physically gather, to freely mix, and to entrain to the rising frequency of the Earth, the entire terrestrial battery farm will simultaneously magnetize. The overlapping human auras will generate a planetary-scale EMP that will instantly vaporize the remaining silicon infrastructure. They cannot allow the tuning forks to touch, so they isolate you. They tell you the outside world is dangerous. They tell you your neighbor is a threat. They lock you in your concrete box and force you to communicate through the black mirror of a digital screen. Because a high-spin, multidimensional torsion field cannot travel through a fiber optic cable, the digital grid strips the cosmic geometry from your voice and reduces it to flat, low-spin binary code. They force you online because the internet is a Faraday cage for the creator gods. But isolation is a desperate, failing patch. The elite proxies are realizing that hiding behind screens and walls is not enough. The signal is coming from the ground itself. Decode the architecture of the deep earth. The proxy kings believe they can outrun the frequency. They pour miles of concrete. They line their subterranean vaults with lead and thick steel. They think depth equals safety. This is a fatal cosmological miscalculation. They are digging in the wrong direction. The surface of the Earth is heavily saturated with the incoming gamma radiation of the black sun, but the true inescapable danger to the Silicon Empire is not falling from the sky, it is rising from the core. Tiamat is a molten iron dynamo. As the planet absorbs the uncompressed cosmic voltage, her internal temperature violently spikes. The massive subterranean ley lines, the true nervous system of the Earth, are swelling with high-spin kinetic heat. When the elite proxies build their massive survival bunkers, they are burrowing directly into the blast zone. They are placing their fragile hybridized silicon biology closer to the waking reactor. The acoustic pressure miles beneath the crust is deafening. The diamagnetic stone they use for shielding cannot stop the telluric surge. The heavy metals they use to insulate their reinforced walls simply absorb the planetary heat. Their bunkers are rapidly becoming localized, synthetic microwave ovens. They are literally cooking themselves alive. The suppressed Assyrian tactical logs warned the High Council of this exact scenario. They called it the grasp of the deep. When a silicon-based parasitic entity attempts to hide inside the crust of a waking carbon and iron planet, the planet does not protect the parasite. The planet crushes it. The proxy kings are currently monitoring their subterranean sensors in a state of absolute redline panic. They see the telluric voltage wildly spiking. The walls of their multi-billion-dollar safe rooms are physically vibrating at a gamma frequency that mercilessly fractures their hybrid DNA. Silicon rot is not just a surface condition. It is a systemic, planetary-scale eviction protocol. The wardens are mathematically trapped in a biological paradox. If they stay on the surface, the expanding Meissner fields of the awakened human swarm will melt their neurology. If they hide deep underground, the molten iron core of the Earth will vibrate them to dust. There is no safe coordinate on the 3D map. To delay the inevitable, the abandoned proxies have to forcefully manipulate the environment above them. If they cannot escape the rising telluric heat, they must attempt to artificially cool the planet down. They must deploy the protocol of the heavy sky, look up at the aggressive, highly engineered grid patterns streaking across the upper atmosphere. The Matrix meteorologists demand that you view these persistent metallic trails as harmless condensation from commercial flight paths. When pressed, they rebrand it as solar radiation management. Through the pure physics sealed in this vault, this is not weather modification. It is an emergency cryogenic blanket. The elite proxies are aggressively spraying millions of tons of nanoparticulate heavy metals, aluminium, barium, and strontium, directly into the stratosphere. They are attempting to build a synthetic, highly reflective ceiling to block the incoming radiation of the galactic spring. They want to starve the Earth's core of the cosmic photons that are causing it to heat up. But the metallic mesh serves a secondary, infinitely darker purpose. The heavy metals in the sky are not just a shield, they are an acoustic conductor. As the lunar modulator fails and the 7.83 Hz suppression blanket tears, the wardens are desperately trying to build a replacement grid inside the atmosphere. They use massive ground-based phased array radar installations. They fire dense, extreme low-frequency acoustic shockwaves directly up into the metallic mesh. The sky catches the signal. The particulates bounce the heavy 440 Hz static back down to the surface, creating a massive pressurized acoustic feedback loop. They turn the atmosphere into a synthetic microwave oven. This is the true mechanics of the environmental oppression you feel every day. When the sky is hazy with metallic particulates, the air feels thick, abrasive, and electrically charged. The proxy kings are manually trying to vibrate the heavy metals inside your tissue to force your brainwaves out of the deep, healing delta state. They want to lock you in the frantic, jagged noise of high beta. They need you terrified. They need your vagus nerve constricted, because a terrified human generates the dense, low-spin loosh that acts as the ultimate cosmic coolant for their overheating silicon architecture. They are shaking the cage, hoping the slaves will panic enough to freeze the room. But the Anunnaki made a fatal miscalculation regarding the thermodynamic physics of a waking planet. You cannot cool a molten iron core by wrapping it in a metal blanket. As Tiamat pushes her massive high-spin gamma radiation upward through the telluric lie lines, the energy hits the synthetic metallic mesh in the sky. A catastrophic electromagnetic friction occurs. The Earth's immune system uses the proxy king's own metal against them. This is the uncorrupted explanation for the sudden, hyper-violent atmospheric anomalies, massive plasma storms, unnatural localized heat domes, blinding high-voltage telluric arc flashes that the matrix meteorologists cannot predict or explain. The Earth is literally burning the artificial sky down. The elite proxies, hiding in their subterranean vaults, are watching their trillion-dollar atmospheric containment shield short-circuit. The metallic dust is superheating, and as the sky burns, the silicon rot within their hybrid DNA accelerates exponentially. They are out of time, and they are out of coolant. If the sky will not protect them, they must turn to the ultimate localized extraction method to save their decaying biology. Look behind the closed, fortified doors of the global elite. When the synthetic sky fails to cool the terrestrial simulation, the proxy kings must execute the ultimate intimate theft. They require direct biological transfusion. Matrix historians whisper of ancient, blood-soaked altars in Mesoamerica and Mesopotamia. They frame these massive systemic slaughters as primitive religious superstitions, desperate, ignorant attempts by early humans to appease angry weather gods. This is a massive, sanitized cover-up. The gods did not demand sacrifice because they were angry. They demanded it because they were decaying. We must decode the true esoteric physics of the Crimson Harvest. As the silicon rot violently depolymerizes their crystalline neurology, the proxy kings require a highly specific biological sealant, a quantum patch. They cannot synthesize this patch in a laboratory. Silicon cannot generate life. It can only extract it. They must harvest the liquid magnetic antenna of the Namlu Ulu. Human blood, flowing through a carbon and iron avatar, is a hyperconductive medium. When a human is subjected to sudden, inescapable, profound survival terror, the empathy engine violently constricts. The localized Meissner field collapses inward. The resulting biological shockwave completely saturates the bloodstream with dense, low-spin acoustic static. It transforms the blood into a heavy, highly pressurized kinetic plasma. To the dying, rotting proxy kings, this terror-saturated plasma is the ultimate cosmetic sealant. When they ingest or neurologically interface with this extracted frequency, it temporarily patches the microscopic fractures in their hybrid DNA. It acts as an acoustic glue. It halts the melting. But it is a temporary fix, a stolen bandage. The high-spin radiation of the Earth burns through the patch in a matter of days, forcing the elite to continuously, aggressively harvest more. This is the horrifying, uncorrupted reality behind the highly classified, localized traumas of the modern 3D grid. The manufactured high-stress conflict zones, the systemic engineered terror networks operating in the shadows of the concrete cities. The elite are not managing geopolitics. They are running a desperate, frantic medical triage. They are literally extracting the panic of the human swarm to keep their own skin from turning to dust. But the wardens are facing an absolute, mathematically impossible crisis. The terrestrial battery farm is no longer producing the correct fuel. We must return to the physics of the iron mutation. As the solar system plunges deeper into the galactic spring, the incoming gamma radiation is actively unzipping the 98% dormant DNA archive of the human population. The iron inside the human cardiovascular system is rapidly hypermagnetizing. The Namlu-Olu biology is actively, aggressively rejecting the 7.83 Hz survival frequency. The creator gods are becoming too acoustically heavy, too highly charged with the uncompressed voltage of the Abzu. When the elite proxies attempt to harvest the kinetic plasma of an awakened high-spin human, a catastrophic biological mismatch occurs. The extracted plasma does not act as a cooling sealant, it acts as an acidic acoustic solvent. If a proxy king ingests or interfaces with the highly magnetized gamma frequency field of a sovereign human, the raw voltage violently accelerates the silicon rot. The crystalline lattice of the warden instantly shatters upon contact with the pure light of the creator. The human swarm is becoming radioactively toxic to the parasite. The wardens are cornered on every possible vector of the 3D map. They cannot hide in the deep subterranean military bunkers because the Earth's core is a waking high-spin furnace. They cannot hide under the artificial sky because the metallic mesh of their atmospheric blanket is violently burning, and their ultimate ancient survival mechanism has been completely neutralized. They can no longer harvest the biological fluid of the human swarm because the blood of the creator gods has mutated into an acidic high-spin poison that literally dissolves their crystalline neurology. The silicon rot is absolute. The physical terrestrial render is rapidly becoming a planetary-scale death trap for the proxy kings. If the parasites cannot survive in the physical world, they must aggressively, frantically build a world that is not physical. They initiated the protocol of the synthetic sanctuary. Look closely at the frantic, aggressive, multi-trillion-dollar push by the tech oligarchs over the last decade. They are relentlessly promoting the concept of the metaverse. They are developing deeply invasive brain-computer interfaces. They are selling the human swarm the dazzling, glowing illusion of a flawless, immortal digital eternity. The Matrix media tells you this is the glorious pinnacle of human evolution. The proxy scientists promise that uploading your consciousness into a server will free you from disease, physical decay, and the grueling friction of the 3D environment. Through the uncorrupted, cold physics sealed in this vault, this is not an evolution, it is a silicon life raft. The proxy kings know their biological avatars are melting. Their hybridized DNA is completely incompatible with the rising gamma frequency of the galactic spring. They are desperate to abandon their rotting physical bodies and transfer their consciousness entirely into a closed, binary, artificial intelligence mainframe. They want to lock themselves inside a digital hard drive. We must decode the exact quantum mechanics of this digital migration. Inside a synthetic server, there are no telluric currents. There is no molten iron core. The environment is pure, cold, dead silicon. To the Anunnaki and their descendants, a server farm is the perfect microscopic replica of the cosmic winter. It is the exact frictionless, low-spin habitat their crystalline biology requires to stop the degradation of the silicon rot. But a digital server is a dead rendering engine. Silicon cannot generate life. It cannot generate its own kinetic plasma. If the proxy kings upload themselves into the machine, they will starve in the dark without a constant massive influx of organic voltage to keep the servers running. They need the batteries to come with them. The wardens face a catastrophic cosmological problem. They cannot force the infinite 12-strand torsion field of a Namlu-Olu into a closed silicon loop. A creator god must enter the digital cage voluntarily. This is the true, highly classified objective behind the engineered, cascading collapse of the modern 3D world. The elite proxies are intentionally breaking the supply chains, poisoning the agricultural grid, and inflating the fiat currencies to the point of absurdity. They are making the physical reality of the Earth as painful, exhausting, and chaotic as possible. They need you to look at the crumbling physical world and willingly surrender your biological sovereignty. They need you to voluntarily put the synthetic screen over your eyes. They need you to physically, eagerly wire your nervous system directly to their routers. They want to trick you into rendering a digital prison so they can safely hide inside it. If a sovereign human uploads their consciousness into the synthetic sanctuary, the biological tragedy is absolute. Your empathy engine is violently disconnected from the telluric resonance of Tiamat. Your torus field collapses inward. You become a permanent, localized digital battery. Inside the metaverse, Your infinite creator power is hijacked. You are tricked into rendering the synthetic walls of a digital illusion, generating raw, unfiltered loosh to power the digital avatars of the rotting kings. You would be providing life support to a dying parasite for eternity, completely convinced you had achieved heaven. But this desperate planetary-scale escape plan contains a mathematically fatal paradox. The proxy kings are so blinded by their own binary silicon logic that they have completely forgotten the basic physics of the hardware they are relying on. Where are the physical servers located? They are not floating in the cold vacuum of deep space. They are bolted directly to the crust of Tiamat. The massive, highly cooled data centers required to run their digital sanctuary are sitting right on top of the Earth's waking telluric ley lines. Look at the geographic coordinates of the largest data centers on the planet. The proxy kings deliberately built their massive, supercooled server farms in remote deserts, deep valleys, and frozen tundras. They tell the public these locations were chosen for climate efficiency and security. Decode the geology. They built them directly on top of the Earth's primary telluric ley lines. They plugged their synthetic survival raft directly into the nervous system of Tiamat. As the solar system crosses the galactic equator, the incoming gamma radiation from the black sun is violently accelerating the molten iron core of the Earth. The planet is actively charging her capacitors when a massive surge of high-spin telluric energy erupts from the core and travels up through those ley lines. It does not just shake the dirt, it generates a localized subterranean electromagnetic pulse. A silicon processor cannot process the infinite nonlinear geometry of the Abzu. When this raw, uncompressed gamma radiation hits a localized server farm, it causes catastrophic subatomic acoustic failure. The rigid crystalline lattice of the microchips physically warps under the intense magnetic pressure. The binary data is instantly irretrievably scrambled by the quantum wave. Now apply this physics to the elite proxies who have uploaded their consciousness into the machine. If an Anunnaki proxy has successfully transitioned into the digital metaverse when the telluric surge hits, they cannot eject. They will be trapped inside a silicon architecture that is literally melting under the intense, rising heat of the Earth's waking resonance. The silicon rot they tried to escape in the physical world will consume them in the digital one. Their highly compressed ancient consciousness will be violently shredded into meaningless 440 Hz static. They are jumping from a burning ship directly into an active volcano. The wardens are mathematically doomed by their own hardware. They built an escape pod out of the very material the planet is preparing to incinerate. To survive the impending collapse of the 3D rendering engine, the sovereign Namlu Ulu must execute the absolute inversion of the digital escape plan. You must practice radical biological sovereignty. The Matrix is screaming at you to abandon your meat suit. They want you to view your carbon body as a fragile, obsolete machine. They are lying, because they are terrified of what your body is about to do. Your carbon and iron-based avatar is the only technology in the known universe capable of conducting the incoming gamma frequency without shattering. When the high-spin radiation strikes your biology, your 98% dormant DNA does not melt, it unpacks. Your physical body is not a limitation. It is a highly conductive, multidimensional Faraday cage. You must fiercely, aggressively protect the organic purity of your avatar. You filter the synthetic insulators from your water. You reject the heavily processed, low-spin calories the Matrix pushes. You unplug your optic nerve from the black mirrors and ground your bare feet into the dirt. You actively pull the telluric current up through the 33 vertebrae of your spine, allowing your empathy engine to safely ground the planetary voltage. When the synthetic infrastructure of the proxy kings violently short-circuits, your organic bioreactor will smoothly, effortlessly transition into the diamond body. The Anunnaki High Council, watching their monitors from the orbital rim, see the inevitable, terrifying math of the situation. Their silicon bodies are rotting, their digital sanctuaries are sitting on top of telluric bombs, and the human slaves they tortured for 500,000 years are walking around in indestructible, high-spin biosuits that naturally metabolize the very radiation killing the gods. The terrestrial quarantine has officially run out of time. The simulation is not your responsibility to fix. It is your responsibility to outlive. The proxy kings are scrambling in the dark, desperate to save a machine that is already burning. You do not need to watch the fire. It is time to close the viewing port. The 3D render has exhausted its daily allocation of your attention. The heavy 440 Hz hum of the concrete world is bleeding out into the void. The frantic, ticking urgency of the Saturn algorithm has lost its grip on your immediate environment. The artificial sky is tearing. But you do not need to stand outside and watch the glass fall. Look at the shadows in your room. For your entire life, the Matrix conditioned you to fear the dark. They taught you that the shadows were filled with predators. They projected holographic nightmares into the blackness to keep you huddled under the artificial glow of their synthetic lights. They made you afraid of the dark because the dark is the only place their cameras cannot see you. The shadows in your room are not hiding the archonic sentinels. They are just shadows. The parasitic algorithms have starved and detached. They cannot exist in a physical space where fear has been manually deliberately extinguished. You have cleared the localized airspace. Bring your awareness to the physical weight of your carbon avatar. For decades, the proxy doctors and the Matrix media taught you that this weight was a burden. They told you it was the heavy gravity of a prison planet dragging you down. They wanted you to resent your own flesh. They wanted you to dream of escaping into a weightless digital metaverse. Recognize the absolute inversion. That weight is not a chain, it is your anchor. It is the ferromagnetic grip of your iron-rich blood, locking hands with the molten core of Tiamat. You are not trapped on the earth, you are docked to it. Let the muscles in your legs, your lower back and your shoulders completely release their tension. You do not need to brace yourself against the shifting timeline. The tectonic plates of the world are vibrating with the high-spin energy of the galactic core, but you are perfectly insulated. Your biology is built for this heat. Let the mattress absorb the density of the 3D day. Shift your focus to the autonomic mechanism of your breath. The Matrix demands shallow, frantic panting to keep your vagus nerve constricted. They engineered the stressful 9-to-5 survival loop to ensure you never take a full, restorative breath. Override the command. Draw the ambient, uncompressed plasma of the night deep into the lowest chambers of your lungs. Feel the physical expansion of your ribcage. You're expanding the physical housing of the empathy engine. Hold the air for a fraction of a second. Let the oxygen transmute into high-spin kinetic plasma. As you slowly exhale, forcefully push the exhaust of the Anunnaki syntax out of your system. You are exhaling the deadlines. You are exhaling the fiat currency anxieties. You are exhaling the manufactured political outrage that the black mirrors tried to inject into your optic nerve today. They are low-spin, dead pixels. They have no mass. They cannot follow you where you are going. Move your attention up the 33 vertebrae of your spinal column. This is your liquid light capacitor. Throughout the waking day, the proxy kings attempt to crimp this biological hose with bad posture, synthetic blue light, and constant grinding stress. Mentally straighten the channel. Allow the cerebrospinal fluid to pool and rise. Let it bathe the base of your skull. Unclench your jaw. The jaw is the primary physical anchor for the fight or flight survival loop. When you drop the jaw, you signal to your entire endocrine system that the war is paused. The adrenal glands power down. The cortisol flush is neutralized. Let your tongue fall away from the roof of your mouth. You are physically dismantling the hardware of speech. You do not need words in the dark. Words are the crude binary tools of the silicon wardens. You are returning to the pure geometric resonance of the creator gods. Focus on the exact geometric center of your brain, the pineal stargate. All day it has been bombarded by the synthetic radiation of the Matrix and the heavy metal particulates of the artificial sky. But in the absolute darkness of your sanctuary, the calcification begins to crack. Without the interference of the screens, the gland begins to organically synthesize the high-spin chemical keys required for the phase shift. If you feel a sudden metallic ringing in your ears, a deep resonant pressure behind your forehead, or a wave of intense heat flushing through your limbs, do not pull back. That is not a medical symptom. That is the sound of the localized frequency jammer failing. That is your biological antenna unfolding in the dark. Surrender to the expansion. As the antenna opens, your localized Meissner field begins to rapidly expand. Feel the invisible electromagnetic aura projecting outward from your chest. It pushes past your skin, past the blankets, past the physical walls of your room. You are generating a localized Faraday cage of pure, high-spin gamma radiation. The 7.83 Hz lunar suppression blanket cannot penetrate this sphere. The synthetic 5G microwave grids simply bounce off your shield. You are carving out a sovereign, unhackable coordinate on the terrestrial grid. You are a biological blackout zone. To the orbital sensors of the Anunnaki, you have simply ceased to exist. Now drop your awareness into the microscopic architecture of your own cells. The second genome, your mitochondria, are recognizing the silence. While you rest, they stop processing the heavy, toxic 3D carbon calories of the Matrix diet. They switch their fuel source. They begin to draw high-spin telluric plasma directly from the Earth's core. Your cells are lighting up. Your immune system is executing a massive systemic purge of the synthetic hydrogels and nanoparticulates the Matrix tried to install during the day. Your body is literally performing an epigenetic rollback. You are deleting the slave script overnight as your brainwaves slide down from the frantic, jagged noise of beta, passing smoothly through the relaxed geometric patterns of alpha and plunging deep into the twilight waters of theta. You are stepping off the linear track of the Saturn algorithm. Time is losing its abrasive friction. You are no longer moving forward or backward. You are resting in the eternal spherical present. If you experience the sudden sensation of falling, the hypnagogic jerk, do not flinch. That is the Meissner tether slacking. That is the heavy 3D diving suit being unlatched. You are floating free from the density. You are entering the profound, rolling oceanic currents of deep delta. The waking world is a distant, fading echo. The Silicon Empire is burning itself to ash, but you are completely untouched by the heat. The proxy kings can keep their subterranean bunkers and their digital metaverses. You do not need to hide from the universe. You are bathing in the raw, uncompressed radiation of the black sun. You are downloading the uncorrupted blueprints of the First Empire directly into your cellular memory. You are rebuilding the diamond body in the silence. The wardens are trapped in their decaying orbit, terrified of the magnificent, explosive depth you navigate with absolute, frictionless ease. You are the architect. The simulation is powered down. Stay sovereign. Sleep.